What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my betting action for this weekend's UFC card, which is UFC Vegas 77. We have Holm taking on Bueno Silva in the women's bantamweight main event for potentially 5 rounds of action in a now championless weight class. Since Amanda Nunes has retired a couple months ago, we now have this event, which is kind of pivotal for the rankings. You know, Bueno Silva, a lot of finishes on her record. She seems to be improving, a very good Brazilian talent. Holm, a former champion, but that was almost 8 years ago. But since then, she's still only lost to high-level competition, and she has a very well-rounded game. Even though she is 41, could she potentially win this matchup in impressive fashion and find herself near another title shot before her career ends? That's what's on the line here. So there's a lot of new talent on this fight card, 13 fights in total. A lot of untrustworthy fighters that are either coming off of long layoffs or trying to get their very first win in the UFC. So it's slim pickings as far as like what money lines I want to trust, but I do have 2 money lines, I have 3 prop bets, and I've got 1 parlay. So all said and done, that sounds like a decent amount of action. It's a little bit less investment than I normally have on the betting side for a UFC card. Just wasn't a lot of spots that I was crazy about, but it should be fun. There's some violence spots I like on here. So before we get into all of it, I'm just going to be going over my betting action, not every single fight. So if you want to have analysis and a thorough breakdown of all of the fights on this card, check out my full card breakdown I released on Tuesday. And if you want to learn about the DraftKings side of this fight card, check out my live stream I did with Monk Maddox last night. Really good insight. I'm a beginner when it comes to DFS. I don't cover that on my channel, but Monk is very good at breaking it down for a beginner like myself, or people who are really, really into it and just want that extra advice from somebody who covers all the stats. So check that out and follow my guy Monk on his YouTube at Monk Maddox. Very fun back and forth we had last night. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's break into the first money line of the night I have, which is already a risky one in my opinion. I've got Alex Munoz to defeat Carl Deaton. This is at men's lightweight. And Alex Munoz is one of these guys who's coming off of a long layoff of 2 years. He had knee injuries and I think a couple surgeries. But he's a coach at Team Alpha Male, which is a very high-level gym known for their wrestling game plans. And that's exactly what this guy brings to the table. He's a former D1 collegiate wrestler at a high level. And, he's still searching for his first win in the UFC. He dropped the ball against Nasrat Haqparast. I think it might have been on short notice in a debut. And he also lost a very close split decision that easily could have gone his way to Luis Pena, who has not been in the UFC for some time. So that just goes to show how long it's been since Munoz has been in the cage. But he's got a very talented athleticism to him, very fast on his level change, good slams off the cage, good double legs out in space. Not the most dangerous guy, but I think he'll be busy enough and grab enough control time to win this. Carl Deaton, he's 0-1 in the UFC as well. He lost to Joe Selecki, who's a ground fighter himself, a very good BJJ player who controlled Carl Deaton in his debut for the entire 8 or 9 minutes that fight took place until getting submitted at the end. And Carl Deaton, I do have respect for this guy's game. He's taken the long road to get to the UFC. On the regional scene, he was facing a lot of guys in some tough back and forth matches. He's managed to build up a pretty well-rounded skill set, but he's not great anywhere. His striking is probably more diverse than that of Alex Munoz, who's very basic with his wrestle boxing style, but I don't think it's dangerous enough, and I think Carl Deaton really does lack in the takedown defense. And it's a guy who's confident enough to, force scrambles on the mat, but usually finds himself on bottom position. So I think the top pressure from Alex Munoz, just the talent level and athletic difference here is too much. So at 1.5 units at minus 150 on his money line, I'm looking to just win 1 unit on Alex Munoz's return at lightweight. So the next one I'm a little bit more confident in, actually quite a bit more confident in. This is Melquizael Costa to defeat Austin Lingo at men's featherweight. I'm taking Melquizael Costa 2 units on his money line at minus 200 to win 1 unit in return. And I think he finishes Austin Lingo probably within 1 or 2 rounds by knockout, but just taking the money line is the safe route. Melquizael Costa is young and improving in the UFC. He just dropped the ball as a very big underdog in his short notice debut, but that was against Thiago Moises, who's a high-level guy. Costa brings a well-rounded game. He had very good matches in the LFA, a third-round TKO over Junior Mello, which was a super dominant win there. He's just got a diverse array of combinations he throws on the feet. Way better striker than Austin Lingo, who's more of a one-dimensional boxer. Powerful, but still one-dimensional for mixed martial arts. The only gripe I have about Costa is the fact that he's young and unproven at the level, but he's a guy who sometimes can get taken down himself and controlled on the mat. You're not going to get that problem with Austin Lingo, who, like I said, is just strictly a striker. So I think Costa's got a big grappling advantage and an advantage on the feet, and I think he defeats Austin Lingo inside the distance. But I'm taking his money line, 2 units at minus 200. Pretty confident in that play there. And that wraps up the money lines, but I do have one parlay. This is kind of one I feel guilty about because it's just a super chalky parlay. I'm taking Jack Della Maddalena, who's the latest addition to this card. He's taking on a debuting fighter named Basel Hafez on short notice. And I'm also taking Evan Elder on this parlay, who's taking on Gennaro Valdez. So the combined parlay odds there is minus 180. Not the best, but I'm putting 2 units on this to win just over 1 unit. I just think both guys have good matchups in front of them. Evan Elder, probably not the best value on this money line at minus 315. He does take on a dangerous threat in Gennaro Valdez, but Valdez has no defense. He is 100% offense, dangerous early with a brawling come-forward style, and if he can't take your head off, he'll just go for the takedowns. If that doesn't work, I don't think he's going to really have much success in this fight. Evan Elder is coming out of Killcliff FC, a young talent at 155 here, and the guy's got a very technical game plan. He's probably got an advantage in the striking defense, the striking diversity, and a strength in the grappling, I would say as well. So give me Evan Elder pretty confidently on that side. But we've got Jack Della Maddalena, who's just such a fluid switch stand striker out of Australia. The guy's 4-0 or 5-0 in the UFC, all of them first round stoppages. Last one was a club and sub victory over Randy Brown. So they're just trying to get this guy to be active. He was supposed to fight Sean Brady last week. That fell through. Supposed to fight Josiah Harrell last week. That fell through. Now he's a sizable favorite at minus 550 over a newcomer out of Fury FC and CFFC in Basel Hafez, who's a BJJ black belt and a very explosive, fast starter, but the guy fades late, and I think his best chance is to get this fight to the mat and submit Jack Della early. Otherwise, I think he goes on to lose the fight. I think Jack Della has a good shot of getting a round 1 or round 2 knockout here. So I expect both of these guys, Evan Elder and Jack Della, to cruise to victory here, and that's a minus 180 combined parlay odds. Again, 2 units on that one. So kind of an ill-advised parlay. I don't think we're getting the best value out of either of those lines, but together, my confidence in both of them to come through should net us just over 1 unit on that parlay. The rest of my betting action is in a series of over-under props. I've got the under 1.5 for Terence McKinney taking on Naseem Sadikov at 155, the first fight of the main card. It's a Terence McKinney fight. You know, this is always a bet that's going to stick out as the under 1.5 because he's a very explosive starter, but he's got good grappling and he's got a good wrestling background to complement his striking that's very powerful too. But he's got a one-track mind to go in there and force an exchange. You know, a very tall, upright stance, flat-footed for all of the power into his strikes. And he's going to go out on his shield or he's going to get the victory. So far this guy is 13-5 professionally. That's 18 fights total. 17 of those, win or lose, have ended under 1.5 rounds. I think that's a pretty confident way to play this one. 1 unit at minus 170 for the under 1.5. Naseem Sadikov, he's a guy who rarely sees the scorecards either. He does have a lot more round 3 finishes on the regional scene. A very good striker himself, but he's never faced somebody with the power and the experience of Terence McKinney before. So coming off of his first UFC win last time out earlier this year over Evan Elder by a round 3 cut stoppage, I think that was he was destined to lose that fight if it wasn't for that perfectly placed knee that cut Evan Elder over the eye. So again, I don't know how much I learned from that one. Sadikov even himself got dropped in the first couple rounds there. I think Terence McKinney's far more dangerous than Evan Elder, and I think that win or lose, this will go less than 7.5 minutes. So just 1 unit on that under. And I've got a similar situation in this next prop, which I've bet at minus 250, the under 2.5 between Francisco Prado and Atman Zaitar. I put 1.5 units on this prop. I think it's got a good shot of cashing the under 1.5 here, but I'm giving myself an extra round, paying a bit more on this bet, because there's a bit of an unknown quality with both of these guys. And what I mean by that is both guys do have insane finishing props. It's 100% finish rate in all 11 wins for Prado, who's got more of a well-rounded way of winning his fights. On the regional scene of Argentina, He got about half of them by knockout, half of them by submission over some, mixed quality opponents there. But he's coming off of his first decision result in his debut against Jamie Mullarkey last time we saw him. He got largely controlled on the mat. It was more of a low output affair there. So that was the first time he went to decision, but all other 11 fights he's had, he's finished under 2.5 rounds. Atman Zaitar, this is a guy who came off of a long layoff before facing Matt Frevola a few months ago, and he got knocked out in round 1. He forces a very close-range brawl, and he does have some vicious weapons up close. The hooks left and right, they're powerful, the uppercuts, and when he swarms and he senses you're hurt, he's very accurate to chase the kill. But again, out of his 13 wins, 12 of them are by finish. 10 of those are first-round finishes, so we're really limited with how this guy's going to perform outside of round 1. I would opt to say it's probably not very good, and I think Francisco Prado would be more equipped to finish these fights if it goes over that 1.5 round mark. But I'm taking the under 2.5 here. Prado, I'm not sure how durable he is against high-level competition. Somebody like Atman Zaitar is a lot more dangerous and threatening than Jamie Mullarkey in the knockout aspect. So if this does happen to sneak past round 1, at least I've got another round and a half to cash this bet here. But I think it's very likely that this finishes under 1.5. But I'm taking that under 2.5 and just having some safety. So I know I got it at minus 250 on Bovada for 1.5 units. I think that price has since gone up in the past 24 hours. But I still think that's a solid parlay piece if you want to put some violence bets together on this card. I do like that spot. So again, under 2.5, minus 250, 1.5 units for Zaitar and Prado. And I think Zaitar has a good shot of getting this one done. He's the more dangerous guy, the more experienced guy. And, I'm not so sold on Prado just yet. The final prop I have is in the co-main event of the evening at middleweight between Albert Jurayev and Junyon Park. I'm taking the fight goes to split decision prop for a quarter unit at plus 550 on DraftKings. And I'll explain why. Both of these guys have kind of a similar success and path to victory in the UFC. Both guys like to get the fight to the mat. Junyon Park is coming off of back-to-back submissions. He's a pretty well-rounded, durable fighter who's had a lot of bouts in the UFC. If he can get the fight to the mat, he can rain down ground and pound and just hold control and even look for submissions. And he got those over Dennis Tululin and Joe Holm. So not the best level of opponents recently, but he's very capable. And he's probably going to have the more output in this fight if it stays standing. But Albert Jurayev, a European grappler, he's very good at getting takedowns early, but not always urgent to push the pace with those. And I think that is due to his suspect gas tank. We saw him not look very good in his debut against Roman Kopylov towards the end. Started off strong, faded late, was pretty close towards the end of that fight. With Joaquin Buckley, once he couldn't get those takedowns due to the power threat of Joaquin Buckley, he started to fade. He got finished by TKO in between rounds from his eye swelling up, and he was definitely slowing down. In his last fight against Chidi Njokuani, another very dangerous striker, and he started off strong, urgent with the takedowns, but by rounds 2 and 3, he opted to have a very low output striking affair and just squeaked by a split decision result in a win there. So I'm not very impressed with Albert Jurayev. But I do think he's got a simple game plan to win this fight if he would just be more urgent with his takedown threat. And he's finally facing a guy in Junyon Park who's not as potent of a finisher as his last two opponents. So I think it's a step down potentially in the danger aspect for Junyon Park. But for Junyon Park, I think this is a step up in competition naturally from his last two opponents in Tululin and Joe Holm. So I think they're crossing paths here in a very interesting way, where if Albert Jurayev starts strong in round 1, could probably secure that round. Probably have a back and forth round 2 where he starts to slow down in his output. And I think Junyon Park has got a very good shot at winning the final part of this fight. Late round 2 coming on as Jurayev fades, and then in round 3 probably dominating that fight. So this could be a head scratcher when it comes to the judging. Just like Chidi and Jurayev, it could be Jurayev round 1, round 3 for Junyon Park, and then round 2, who knows? It could be really left to interpretation. So that's why I like that bet at 0.25 units. Plus 550, the fight goes to split. Just a long shot on that high payout prop. And of course, I always complement this with the 0.1 unit sprinkle on either guy to win by split, which is 0.1 units on Jurayev by split at plus 1100, 0.1 units on Junyon Park to win by split at plus 900. For a fight that's slated to go to decision more often than not, or at least at a high clip, I would say that that's a pretty good number for a fight that's historically, these guys have a lot of split results. So obviously, if the split itself hits at that quarter unit investment, one of those other 2.1 unit sprinkles will hit in return. So just a kind of a fun bet there, if I'm reading this correctly, but this could easily play out in a number of ways. So that's all of my betting action for this card, those 2 money lines, the 3 props, and the 1 parlay. But the other ideas I had, I do have a couple that I do like. I just didn't have the balls to play this first one. Evan Elder versus Gennaro Valdez, the over 1.5 at around like minus 150 or so. And even the fight going to decision for that fight at lightweight at like plus 250 I've seen. I think that's a mispriced line. I think this is, largely slated to go under just because of Gennaro Valdez's lack of defense and his finishing power in round 1. But I think Evan Elder is technical enough and does not want to drop a third loss in the UFC. He'll mind his P's and Q's, stick and move early, and avoid danger. And Valdez is pretty tough, and Elder's not the most dangerous threat. So that could extend the clock a bit. And I think as this fight goes on, we might even see some grappling sequences from Evan Elder trying to take this fight to the mat and neutralize the danger from Valdez, securing a safe win in the UFC for Elder at last. And this could actually squeak its way sneakily over 2.5 rounds and all the way to decision. So if you got the balls to play that one, you want to take some years off your life watching Valdez brawl early and possibly get chinned, you could take that bet. I do like it. The next one I have is Jack Della Maddalena by knockout in rounds 1 or rounds 2. Either of those props, I'm not sure what they pay out. I don't think it's been added yet on DraftKings. I could check it real fast, but I think it's a mismatch as far as the striking goes, especially. Basil Hafez is a guy who I think very highly of his skill set on the mat, especially early, but Jack Della, a much higher level competitor here with a lot of UFC experience already under his belt. So short notice for Basil Hafez, not the best striking skill set. I could see him getting knocked out in round 1 or round 2. Just like all of Jack Della Maddalena's UFC performances so far, they've all been round 1. So probably not a bad way if you could get anything under, if we'd be so lucky to get under minus 175 for a Jack Della in round 1. If you want to beef up that number by expecting it to go to round 2 for the first time for Jack Della, could maybe go that route or combine the two with like a DraftKings same game parlay. But I do like live betting Victoria Dudikova after round 1 as well. Obviously not something you can do pre-flop, and I don't think you'd want to on the money line of Dudikova at minus 200 or minus 210 over Estela Nunes. It seems like a layup, right? Estela Nunes, not a very good ground game. Dudikova, that is her strength, but she's still a young, undefeated, untested, debuting fighter here. I'd want to chop that down. Expect Estela to do what she does in all 3 of her fights so far. Starts off very strong with the Muay Thai, but then her opponents kind of figure her out as she slows down and gets taken down. So if you can get closer to minus 150 to possibly, if you're lucky, getting like even money on Dudikova after round 1, I like that play a lot more than betting this debuting fighter at minus 200 now. So that's all of my recommended plays. My moneyline bets, parlay, and 3 props. Not a lot of betting action on this one, but there are some confident spots I've pointed out. So hit me in the comment with your guys' ways to make money on this card. I know there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different money lines and underdogs people are targeting this week. The past 2 weeks have been pretty crazy with a lot of dogs coming through. So don't be scared to expect that same result on this card. Hit me in the comments with your plays and recommendations. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Enjoy all of the fights this weekend, you guys. We'll be back next week to talk a London card. So I'll see you guys then. Cheers.